Hello, everybody. I'm Emma Kelly, founder and managing director of Elevate PR in Dublin, an agency specialising in lifestyle PR with many retail clients. With retail now open after the lockdown in Ireland, the timing is right for our second Elevate Trends, the Future of event, the future of retail in Ireland. We've assembled a panel of retail and media experts for a conversation about how retail brands can survive and thrive in a changing economic and consumer landscape. We will look at the trends that are impacting retail, from climate change to conscious consumption, and from COVID anxiety to Black Lives Matter. Just starting with some housekeeping. As attendees, your video is off and you are on mute. If you would like to ask a question, please just use the Q&A box. Any technical problems, please email emer@elevate.ie. We will start with a brief introduction to the panel and finish up around 12:45 to allow for some questions at the end. Please keep an eye on elevate.ie for other trends events and use the hashtag #ElevateTrends on social media. Now I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves. Let's start with Miriam.
Hi, my name is Miriam Simon. I own a retail consultancy called PTO.ie, and we work with B2B and B2C retailers, and we specialise in consumer and trading strategy. Just to give you a very fast background, I have 30 years
Miriam.
and big box retail. I also do a lot of work with the European Instrument and Horizon 2020, working with new and disruptive innovation. So think med tech or infrastructure changes to education or banking or retail, things that will change how we live in the future. Since the pandemic struck, I have also been doing a lot of work across Ireland, helping small independent retailers to be more agile and to be competitive.
That's an important question I'm going to ask the panel to address as well. How was the lockdown for them? Sonia, let's ask you next.
So I also have 30 years experience. We're like the elder lemons here, Miriam. And my background has always been in fashion, originally as a stylist. And now I wear a number of hats, one of which is as designer and co-founder of Lennon Courtney with Brendan Courtney, which is stocked in Dunnes Stores, and also working in social enterprise, Dress for Success, Lift Ireland. So a lot of different hats under the umbrella of equality, empowerment, and confidence. And Lennon Courtney is the flagship for that.
And how was your lockdown?
Lockdown. I described it as panning for gold in the dirt. That in every crisis there is an opportunity, and for me the opportunity was to completely redesign our strategy as the brand Lennon Courtney, and to pull together all the pieces of it, so that, you know, myself and Brendan do a huge amount around those areas of equality and empowerment that have lived outside of the brand. And really it's about the brand now taking ownership of them, not just but in how we support our community and help our community to feel empowered. And that could be anything from naming the garment right through to quarterly networking webinars for the women who understand our ethos and feel connected to it.
Cool. Kira, how about you?
Yeah, my lockdown has been a very mixed bag, probably like lots of people, spending obviously so much more time in the home and thinking about my home, and being a homes editor and journalist, this has been quite good for me, actually. Well, in terms of like just sort of, you know, where my head is at, and also I suppose where so many other people's heads are at. My background is also fashion mainly, but then I went into interiors probably 7-8 years ago. I became an editor of a UK magazine, and then now I've just started as an editor of House and Home magazine in Dublin. So I'm making the transition back to Ireland from the UK. So I also run a sustainable fashion business called Fashion Reboot, which is essentially like a fashion car boot where you can, where people can come and bring their clothes and sell them to a busy marketplace. So that's with another hat on. That's what.
Excellent. And Ayuba?
My name is Ayuba. I co-own a vintage store in Temple Bar called Toller Vintage with my fiance Aoife. we don't have as much experience as Sonia and Miriam. We've both been doing it for 8 years, and we sell vintage clothing. Yeah. The lockdown was good. For the first 2 weeks, we took a break, just chilled. And then we started going to the warehouse. It's only 5 minutes drive from us. We're selling a lot online. So yeah, so we're very busy during lockdown.
Cool. And Alex?
Hello, I'm Alex. I am creative lead in Strong Roots, which is a frozen plant-based brand. My background is in both design and in luxury equestrian manufacturing goods and in handmade pottery. So a lot of different areas I've worked in. Lockdown has been, from a professional point of view, it was an enormous challenge initially, but a good one. It was a big creative challenge to reconfigure all of our plans and our content and everything around lockdown, and something we were really concerned to be doing right was staying was providing content to people that was going to be useful to them, that would help make their lives a little bit easier. So we didn't feel like we should be doing like Jamie Oliver style cooking videos because there were other people doing that better than us. So we did what we thought was going to help, which was how to freeze your food and how to freeze it well. And that, so yeah, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting time for the frozen food world in particular.
Excellent. Okay, and Emer, my colleague Emer Ibukwe, is on the panel with us here just for any technical issues and for any questions that come in. So I think we'll open it up to the panel, the question of how has COVID impacted retail? And I don't know who'd like to jump in there and answer that question on what has been the COVID impact.
Well, I'll go very quickly to begin. So the most obvious one is we've seen a much faster shift towards digital, particularly in grocery and more perceived functional purchasing. But also we've seen that mind shift and a lot more independence moving to digital also. So, and just want to note that does present its own challenges, because we now have lots of retailers that are still adapting and struggling to balance physical with digital now that they're reopening. And alongside that, social commerce is really started to hugely ramp up. And alongside that change for me is the dynamic shift between local retail and central retail. So we're seeing a dynamic change in between the likes of Grafton Street in Dublin, maybe feeling some pain right now, whereas you're seeing more local due to the curtailment of commuting. You're seeing the likes of Rathmines and Ranelagh and further afield are actually quite buoyant on the local high street. So those are two of the key trends for me.
Ayuba, how did it, you kind of talked about how it impacted your business. Are you seeing any other COVID impact?
Yeah, we generally thought it was going to be negative, but for us it's been really positive. Like Mary mentioned just there, I think the likes of Grafton, they feel the effects of it, but for small business owners, like the local owned business, it's been really good for us. Yeah, I think for us it's been really positive.
How about Sonia, your fashion brand and your retail presence?
The arc of response, I suppose for everybody at the beginning, it's quite shocking. It's how do you tidy up your stock flow? How do you survive? And I suppose it's that kind of constant correction to make sure that you're not over responding or under responding. So it's sort of a weekly, daily response to that, and making sure that you're getting the levels right. For us as well, I suppose, we were a digital first brand. We were an online brand before we were in a physical store. So interestingly, the style of our clothing works very well online because it tends to be bold and simple and led by color and print and silhouette. And we have really seen the benefits of the resurgence in that platform. And I think now we need to think about, there's so much talk about digital first. This is where we are. The question is not how are we dealing with it. It's actually how do we move to the next level? Because if you see sort of the major digital players like Amazon and Alibaba, and you know, they're already working on the next iteration of what that consumer experience is. So it's not enough to kind of set them as the gold standard for how to do it anymore, because they're about to shed that off and move into the next phase. And I think for a brand, that is, I suppose we have a reason for being. We understand our customer. We're under her skin, and we know what her needs are. It's how do we bring her along on a sort of a narrative journey with us to create a much more engaged experience online for her.
Alex, how about in the frozen food category?
I think in food in general, there's been a positive impact, particularly as regards food waste, that people are considering their food purchases more carefully, as they're considering purchases in general more carefully. And I saw figures yesterday on one of the food waste Instagrams, Irish Instagrams that I follow, which indicated that food waste is down. And people are that, like, something that we've been doing for a few months in work is in our content is encouraging people to think about what they need to buy before they go out, because so often when we would shop pre-pandemic, we would just go out and shop and buy whatever you saw. But now you go out with a purpose, because you can't be sort of wandering around the shop just browsing. So now people are shopping with more purpose, and that's having a positive knock-on impact, I hope, and I hope it will continue to, on the amount people are buying and on the amount they're wasting, because obviously food waste is something like, if it was a country, it would be the third largest polluter in the world or something like that. And so it's a significant environmental problem.
Very good. Ciara, what are you seeing in the interior space, and maybe a little bit with your second-hand clothes reboot?
Yeah. So firstly, in interiors, it's obviously been a massive surge when the shops opened. Obviously, IKEA went bonkers, didn't it? Places like that, where you could drive out of town, I suppose, park, and, you know, although I couldn't quite get my head around why people were queuing up with no loo. But anyway, in terms of the interiors, the smaller retailers, the smaller independents, the online retailers who have been able to supply throughout this pandemic have done really well. Everyone, you know, people I've talked to, they seem to have really rallied and upped their game. And you know, Miriam was saying just beforehand about how people are running out of stock. I think that would be more of a concern for a lot of these guys now. The independent ones, is getting, you know, keeping up with the demand. So that's really interesting, and I think there's a massive opportunity there for smaller, little indie brands to really strike out now. In terms of, see, Laura, actually gone, like loads of places just gone. I know we talked about this in preliminary chats. We just said about how the sort of the beige, the magnolia, the boring brands, the things that people have no USP. There's nothing to differentiate them from the next high street shop. They were on their last legs anyway, and they sadly as well, obviously, but they just can't. They just can't keep up. So I think we can say, yeah, there's a definite knell to stores that are not adding something else to the consumer. In terms of fashion reboot, can't get people together at the moment. So I am very interested in the new face mask thing that's come into the UK, where I hope that instills more confidence in people to come in and come together. But just as a sort of, to facilitate a gathering of more than 100 people, for me right now wouldn't really be possible. So, but there's massive interest.
So let's have a look at the trends that were already there in retail that possibly have been accelerated, some of which we've referenced already, like the supply chain issues. Are there any other trends that we already saw coming that some of the panel would like to talk about, that we see are having a bigger impact in retail now?
The move to online, I think, is just jumped light years ahead, and especially in terms of food deliveries online. And in Ireland, because I think Ireland was definitely lagging behind in the food delivery space, and now you saw a lot of the companies who were doing deliveries to offices pivot to delivering to your home. So it showed that it is possible, and that there are models in the US and in the UK for food delivery that we could adopt here as well. But I do think that this pandemic has forced change that would have taken years actually to happen in that area.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
I think what I see is you know, a real sort of exposure of, if you like, the voice and leadership within an organization. And so you're kind of led, and your success or failure in this space is led by your sort of authentic beliefs and what you actually feel about the consumer and about your product and what your brand stands for. And, you know, there've been successes and failures in that area, pretty big ones. And I think now more than ever, you need to understand, you know, as I say, what's your why? Like, why do you exist? What's your purpose for your customer?
I mean, Ayuba, you have the circular economy is really a very big trend in terms of what you're doing.
It's amazing, and I think a lot of people are paying attention to it a lot more. Just the way Alex was saying, a lot of people, like, they just don't go shopping for food. They know exactly what they want, and they're trying to lower down the waste. It's been like that with clothing as well. They try not to buy as much fast fashion, to call it. But as was Sam mentioned as well, they start online. We actually started online as well. We started on ASOS Marketplace, and we're
Okay.
number one on the right, and that's how we actually got enough money to start the shop. Yeah, so online would be the way for us in the future as well. I don't think we'll ever close the shop, but I think, yeah, for most majority of going forward, will be online.
Cool. And Miriam, what are there key trends you're seeing there that are being accelerated?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say that the move away from commuting was going to come in this decade anyway, because of the move towards carbon footprint and circular economy, etc. So we were, by the end of this decade, a lot of commuting would have been curtailed. What COVID did was it made it happen very instantly before the business infrastructure was there to enable it properly to do regarding the dynamics of how we shop and how we're going to shop forward and where we're going to work, live, play, so to speak. Secondly, Brexit. What we're seeing is Brexit is coming on the track like it's steam train, and we're seeing a lot of Brexit strategy play out under the COVID also. So, you know, I think there's a piece here around the Brexit impact being brought on much faster, because some of some of those vanilla or legacy generic retail businesses that may have used Ireland as a bit of a cash cow back in the 90s have perhaps used this as an opportunity to recalibrate their estates. So I think we're beginning to see Brexit play. You know, and that's going to gain momentum over the coming months, I would say.
Ciara, would you add anything? Have anything to add there?
Well, I agree. Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think Brexit is as you say, a train just coming down the line, and nobody really knows. I mean, I don't think they know. I mean, I'm in the UK at the moment, so I don't think they know what's going on. You know, as far as I can make out, I don't think anyone can call it. Hopefully there will be some deal. Hopefully there will be something that will make movement of goods and tariffs and etc. Hopefully we'll be able to come up with something. But yeah, there's a massive nervousness, which obviously is going to affect everybody at the moment.
Cool.
And
I'm
actually,
sorry.
Emma, if I could come in there on that
Yeah.
nervousness, I think one thing that we need to address is how we leverage technology in the physical space, because I think all of us are looking at ATM machines with fresh eyes now. We're not so keen to touch any surface that we don't own. And so, you know, the instantaneous response of the touchless payments being, the ceiling being raised in terms of payments to €50 is going to move gradually, I think, away from any kind of touch-based interaction in store into touch-free. And I know IBM did a fantastic report of 5 years ahead in retail, 5 and 5, I think they call it, and they were kind of visioning this retail space where actually it was led by expertise of the staff. It was led by a kind of a collection and interaction service, and that it will be an entirely touch-free purchase experience. And I think we will find ourselves there quite quickly, and I think this will expedite that for sure.
There are some definitely, I mean, you argue, Miriam, that it's almost a generational change.
Yeah, it is. It is the commuting, the move away from commuting was coming, because like Gen Z and millennials are smart, and they don't see the value in sitting in traffic for 90 minutes before you do an 8-hour day to sit in traffic for 2 hours on the way home. And then alongside that, it's highly likely that by the end of this decade, we'll be personally taxed on our carbon footprint. So it won't be in anybody's interest to be spending several hours a day in any mode of transport. So the you know, a lot of this is, there were very big social and generational shifts that were at play. They were just at play much slower, and then the pandemic happened and it all happened very instantly, you know.
So a lot of our attendees today are marketeers or retailers themselves. As a panel, have we some future kind of thoughts we can give them on the direction the industry is going in, and some top tips on how to navigate the future? Would you like to start there, Ciara?
Well, I think coming back to what we're, you know, what we're talking about, the brands that haven't survived, who are really struggling, it's, you know, it's really important to have a message, to have a communication with your customer, to set out what it is, what you're, set out your stall, and for people to be able to actually you know, buy into that as such more than ever. You know, it's, so I think the sustainability thing is something that is massive now. I think that people are being more considered with what they're buying. So obviously, you know, that's the challenge for retailers, is to really give people what they're looking for in terms of, you know, what they're offering, I think.
Anybody else want to jump in there?
Yeah, I think sort of following on from Miriam's point, I think there is a huge opportunity for localized retailers, not just to leverage technology to bring themselves online, but to create impact within their own communities, and really drive forward communities rather than acquiring customers, which is a little more hollow, when actually, if you think about what a local retailer does in their area in terms of creating employment and, you know, bringing joy and supporting local and all of that kind of thing, that is a very real and tangible impact that I believe should be surfaced, and also to kind of challenge assumptions that we have at this stage, because we can get trapped in pre-assumptions that we have about what the consumer wants in a very changed landscape. And I think talking to our customers and talking to our community about what they actually want is the beginning of shaping a new proposition that fits the purpose.
Ayuba, what would you feel is the future, and what tips would you give to other small business owners who are growing their retail business?
Very similar to Sonia. You have to pay attention to exactly what they want, and you have to really, really find a way to give it to them. We really depend on tourists because of the location of our shop, Temple Bar, and we thought it's going to affect us a lot. The locals are buying a lot more. So we kind of change the way we buy, and how we buy, and how we price a lot. We find a new supplier. We know exactly what tourists normally buy and exactly what the locals would buy. And yeah, because the majority of customers that shop in our shop, the locals are younger, and the tourists will be a little bit older. So we change their pricing a little bit and just give them exactly what they want, really. And we've doubled ourselves by doing that. And we have less footfalls, but more taken in.
Higher sale per customer. And Alex, you're a bit of a digital expert and social media expert. How can that platform be leveraged for marketing retail businesses?
Well, I think we are in the era of the belief-driven buyer, as christened by Edelman last year, and I think that it's been exacerbated by this crisis, that belief is a central, and ethics, and as a purchaser, being much more bought into the brands that you buy from is a trend that's going to only increase, especially as the buying power of millennials and of Gen Z increases, according to our ever-advancing age. And so I think authenticity has always been central to marketing and to content creation, but a lot of brands forget that and they get lost in the hard sell. And I think authenticity and transparency will be more important than ever before as we go forward. And I think that your ability to pivot creatively is going to be even more important as well, because I mean, we found ourselves in the first 6 weeks going through more iterations of content campaigns and ideas than we've gone through in the preceding 6 months, because things changed so fast and they kept changing. And I don't want to be a doomsday prophet, but I don't think that pandemic's going to go away for the world. I think that the world is entering a new phase, and what we have known in the past is over. So yeah, resilience is really key.
And Miriam, you put up a great Instagram post today about how we did shop during lockdown. Would you like to bring us through those, how we did shop?
Well, we did. Well, oh gosh, you asked me. There was the panic buying. We bought deep chest freezers and lots of food and toilet rolls. Then it was about getting organized. It was about, you know, buying the stuff to work at home. Then it was about getting comfortable, you know, that you couldn't buy a fire pit or a barbecue in Dublin for love nor money in May. That, you know, it was like a whole year's supply was sold within a few weeks. And then it became about making ourselves feel more comfortable and feel better about how we were looking. So we were buying the headbands to cover the roots and the flat sneakers and the leisure wear and the elasticated pants. And then it went into relieving boredom. So you had lots of adult children who were locked up at home with their parents. And they were doing come dine with me and things like that. Anybody who cashed in on this or who marketed for these guys did very well. Likewise, you know, crafting, anything that alleviated boredom did very well. But can I just say, regarding the future, I agree completely with Sonia. The future is local, and there is a massive opportunity here. And I also have a concern, and it is a huge opportunity, but there's a need for everybody to work more collaboratively. And by that, I mean big business, you know, local chambers of commerce, government, you know, and retailers to work in a much more collaborative way, because we need to get out of crisis mode. We need to be far more strategic to enable the future here. And from a future point of view, I think the future is going to be blended. And I don't think it's as simple as digitalization, because I think that's very black and white. I think you're going to still need physical retail. It's going to still be really busy in physical retail. I think it's going to be that mixture between physical retail, digital retail, and social commerce. And actually, of the three, social commerce is the fastest growing at the moment. And then blended retail models, subscription economy is going to go boom. We're going to see a lot more subscription-based models alongside premium normal models. We're going to see a lot more vintage in retail right beside prime, as the circular economy. I think for me the future is about blends of models and blends of channels.
And actually we have Mary Rose Lyons from Dublin Chamber is one of our visitors today to the webinar, and I know that they're thinking about that an awful lot. And actually I did a kind of an unpick around where and I suppose it's kind of an interesting one. Can we actually separate digital from physical at this stage? Yes, we can if we're digital first and only, but no, we can't if we're physical. We need to reimagine the purpose of the physical store in a way, because we are digital first now at this stage, and that is the default system. So I think where the real opportunity lies is in, almost starting from a blank slate in terms of the physical retail environment, and what are the things that it can offer the consumer in a brand new way, and that exceptional experience. How do we reshape even the workforce to create that optimal experience for the consumer? How do we create that emotional endowment? How do we make people want to come into a store because it makes them feel better? What are the innovative solutions? And is it that touch-free environment? How can we create an environment where it's not about browsing or choosing. It's about the completion of the process in the arms of experts who can help to make that better. And building on those human relationships. And I suppose, coming back to your point, that idea of this kind of unexpected delight, that it is this kind of partnership model where you can walk into your favorite store because you buy them, you feel them, they feel you, but then all of a sudden Ayuba is a pop-up in there, or you know, you can do something that you didn't expect to do. And I think that partnership model is a very potent way to cross-pollinate communities and build your validity in the marketplace.
And you know, can I just to second that, retail is such an emotional experience, and we are at a really dangerous point here as we you know, I've been doing a lot of work in different times with the retailers, and the key thing here is the balance between protocol for physical retail and the fact that it is an emotional experience. So what we are seeing at the moment is that basket sizes are substantially up. So if anybody is going to make the effort to go shopping, they're going to make it worth their while. But if they then don't have a good emotional experience, because retail is emotional, you know, it is an emotional experience. If they don't have a good emotional experience, they're not going to make that effort again. And there's a lot of retailers not getting that right at the moment.
I mean, Lee Echo-Court, I think is how you pronounce it, a very important trends forecaster. She says it's going to become the age of the artisan, that it's going to be about handmade, that it's going to be back to the farmer's market, local, regional. Does anybody on the panel have an opinion about that? Maybe Ciara, the age of the artisan?
I mean, I think we've seen this happening a lot anyway, haven't we? I mean, it's something that lots of the big brands have tapped into already. Like Topshop have had that kind of circular fashion thing going for a while with vintage. And we've seen Anthropologie is obviously, this is what they do. They tap in with artisans. And of course, that is, I'm sure that will continue. I suppose the worry is that the bigger brands take over the smaller people. You know, we've got to be so careful of that. It's kind of like, I feel like right now it's like smaller brands need to really create their identities. And, you know, the idea that the bigger brands come in and they sort of sweep in, which I know is what's happened definitely in some of those bigger, like Anthropologie and places like that. You know, they end up paying their artists and their artisans absolute pittance to have their name, but they feel they need, you know, it's everyone does it, so you need to be in there. So, yes, I guess it's we're all kind of, it's a learning curve. I think the company that I think in terms of fashion that are probably the ones to look at is Zara, to be honest. I mean, Zara just do everything well, don't they? They're already pivoting. They've already, on their Oxford Street store, you already go in and you pick up things, you put things back there. It's the rails, and Other Stories is another one. The rails are really small. There's like, you know, you're going in for the experience. You're going in for that satisfying
Zara
experience.
have announced they're going to close 1,300 stores, so it hasn't, and they've lost a lot of money. So
of course,
they're trying to navigate.
But their flagships will have this experience that we're talking about. Yeah.
Does anybody else want to comment on artisans and handmade?
Well, I suppose not so much handmade, but certainly independent. Obviously I'm partisan, but I think Dunnes have done it really, really well. So they've scooped up Irish designers and created a stable of Irish design that wouldn't have been able to exist without their support. So certainly as a recipient of that honour, our business model would not have been able to sustain itself without their support. So, and I think as a consequence of that, then they have created, alongside their main brands, a very, very unique experience for shoppers that creates a sort of an additional value and an experience that's very different. So I kind of can't help but say that you know, they have to be held up.
Can I just agree with that?
Absolutely agree.
We've had 2 years of a lot of headlines across Europe of the department store model being dead and doom and gloom and catastrophe. And I think Dunnes are an absolute example of good strategy. So they're absolute proof that you can be a very, very effective and very future fit traditional retailer. You know, a lot of the other legacy department stores are actually, you know, curtailing a lot of their estate and looking to tighten their, you know, Dunnes have actually shown they're a case in point for good strategy, I would say.
Alex, you previously worked with Aaron Street East. I mean, that's a great example of an Irish brand,
Yeah, and for
artisan
that
brand.
reason, I definitely agree with what Kira was saying in that it's already happening, because even when I was working for Irish Design 2015, it was I think the shift to a focus on makers and designers is already underway, and it probably, like many things, is being exacerbated by this. And the same similarly with the shifts, with the increase in interest in growing your own food. And related to that, there was a figure I read the other day which said that property between 4 and 14 acres has been selling more quickly than ever in Ireland, because 4 and 14 acres is a very difficult acreage. It's too big for a garden, it's too small for a farm, but it's a demand. It's as a result of people wanting their own bit of small amount of land to grow things on, and to just have some sort of like homestead kind of resilience. So I do think that's a trend that's definitely going to increase, and kind of homesteader. There's that whole hipsteader trend as well that's creeping in. So we're going back to a more
simpler,
homesteady kind
although
of
it's not that simple.
But with a digital, with this sort of like way where you can just like helicopter in everything you need with drone delivery somehow.
Just a reminder, if anybody wants to ask any questions, please do put them in the Q&A. I think unless anybody wants to say anything else in the panel, I might read out some of the questions here. Here's a question from Gavin Downs, who says, is the shift to online commerce going to help or hurt the local and independent retailers as the likes of Amazon benefit and some local businesses that haven't migrated online really struggle? Did you get that?
I think the one thing that independent and local businesses have in their favour is a much clearer sentiment from consumers around the consequences of their choices. And so I think anybody who is a thinking consumer has to really struggle to justify a purchase on Amazon at this stage. You know, I would certainly think twice before it. I'd have to ask myself, you know, can I take possibly a slightly harder route to get what I want that will support what's on my doorstep? And that's a huge it's a huge trend to align to, I think, at this stage.
I still think that there will be a need for physical retail to go alongside, and to go alongside the digital piece. And I think as an independent retailer, you know your customer far more intimately, because you are either in business because you share a lot of interests with that customer, or you are spending more time face to face with those customers on a daily basis. And actually some of the carnage that we've been seeing play out on the high street is where a lot of these larger legacy retailers have lost that intimacy, and the consumer has changed and they haven't noticed. And that's actually pre-COVID, that was some of the doom and gloom that we were seeing playing out in the headlines, that it was about a change of consumer rather than retail itself, you know. But I think there is a piece where as an independent, you actually, it's about point of difference, and it's about cutting through the noise and having a USP. So I think you need to think about what you're going to specialize on.
And Ayuba, you are an independent, so have you found that Amazon is affecting, or you said you've gone on did you say you went on Marketplace, or what platform did you use?
That's how we started, but we're not on it anymore. We just
Okay. Okay.
I agree with Miriam a lot. I think a lot of customers, they want to feel they're intimate, and they're feeling of actually buying and getting to know, meet the owners, or you actually, when you get feedback face to face, is different from like a feedback online. Just like a young girl came in, it's like, oh, I have anxiety, but your shop makes me feel comfortable. I'm up when I'm here. You know, you feel it more, and I think it's still important to have a physical shop, even though we enjoy it online. But I don't think our online would be as good if we don't have the physical shop to go with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a blend of bricks and mortar, online and social commerce as well, probably, which, you know, selling from Instagram. I think, isn't it, in Facebook and Instagram both launched a shopping feature in lockdown, which is growing.
Well, Facebook have had it for a good few years, so it's
okay.
Now we've rolled it out. But I think that it's the experience, like the real world experience is going to have to improve significantly, I think, for people to really want to shop in the same way again as they did in the past.
I do believe conversion rate is much higher in actual retail, though, as opposed to online browsing and putting into baskets and never fully completing the transaction. Another question here. Some excellent points made by Sonia. Could she expand a bit on the 5 at 5 point that she made around expertise, touch, free experience?
Yeah, so one of the factors of the new landscape of retail is, by definition, retail workers are frontline workers, you know, and they're being hailed as heroes, but not paid as such. And so I know, for example, one major department store during lockdown reimagined their retail floor space as a distribution hub to meet the demands of their online sales, and every retailer has had to reimagine how they meet the demand of online. So with that in mind, and with a lot more human resources going into the distribution end of things, do we begin to reimagine the density of expertise that lives in store? And do those retail personnel become key experts? And so, if you like, the information artisan that can support the product or service being sold. It means then that when you have this in-store experience, it's at the highest level. And that the machinery, the human machinery that supports that, quite often is going to be in the online space and not front of house.
Hopefully that answers your question there. Sorry, let me see who asked that question again. It was Neve O'Carroll. Elaine Hewitt has asked, do you all think this means the end to fast fashion brands and the whole ethos of fast fashion as we know it? We could talk about boycott boohoo here for an example of that.
No, really, I think people are still going to shop. There's certain items that you will need and you always have to get, and you will always, you know, you can't stop that. It's always going to be there. Fast fashion, it's just how they manage it, you know. A lot of people just have to stop buying what they don't need, buy exactly what you need. We advise them basically before you on a night out, before you buy something, look into your wardrobe, see what you need, you know. Do you really have to buy for a new occasion? Can you rework what you have? Can you turn a blouse into like a crop top, tie in front? You know, you don't necessarily have to go and buy a new crop top, you know.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to come in there?
My daughter Emma, and I know yours, and certainly what I see in terms of the sort of circular, particularly with the girls and not necessarily with the boys, is that they're not completely anti-fast fashion, but the life cycle of that purchase is much greater than it used to be. So they make a purchase and then it gets sold and sold and sold and sold and sold around the Depop chain or person to person, word of mouth, individual to individual. And so, you know, that's not just one wear and chuck anymore. It lives beyond that. So their ethos around how they actually use the piece has changed. But I think we can't be naive that fast fashion, low price garment is directed very specifically at a certain life cycle of your consumer growth. And you do get to a certain point where that has no appeal to you anymore. So it is very much based around the youth market. And I suppose the rise understanding of the climate crisis and sustainability is going to shift that and chip away at that. There's no doubt about that. But it is still very much a youth market activity.
And, you know, even in non-clothing, so we are going to see an increase in non-essential products being short-term loaned. So we're moving away from the whole consumerism piece now towards the sustainability piece, and that is going to accelerate in this decade. So, you know, when I grew up, everybody bought their dad an electric screwdriver at Christmas. You know, there was the standard dad gifts. I think things like that. If you need a chocolate fountain, you'll go and hire one for 3 days. If you need a lawnmower, you'll go and hire it for 3 days. So, which leads into that whole blended models. You're going to see a lot more of people hiring as well as buying, and that will
hiring clothes as well.
Clothes also.
Yeah.
And there's already a lot of very, very successful models out there that are doing that very, very well. So I think fast fashion will there will still be an element of it, but I think that market will shrink.
Another question here from Helen Waters. Thoughts on the future for brands with no online presence? Will this pandemic impact their supply chain journey and bring more awareness to their ethical responsibilities? Any thoughts there on that?
I think
that's kind of two questions.
Sorry, Kira, you go first.
No, you go.
I think the idea of a brand with no digital presence is anathema to us at this stage. I just, even if that presence is only on social, you need to be able to digitally connect as a pathway for your customer to understand who you are and what your proposition is. And one of the biggest challenges I have found for retailers is that they are not content creators per se, they're retailers. And that chunk of time, that whole other job of creating content, messaging, and connecting with the consumer, it has become a tipping point. And retailers are falling into two camps. Either they can digitally connect through messaging and content, or they can't. And if they can't, there are some serious questions to be asked.
I was going to say pretty much exactly that. I totally agree with that. I was going to say, to be honest, no, but it's true. It's true. It's not expensive now to just have an Instagram account. It's one thing about building a website and needing that expertise, but really having an Instagram presence, even if you don't do much on it, it doesn't have to be brilliant. You can connect with other people who will help you, and look at other ways to grow your brand that way. Even if you can't do it yourself, there's a way to do it, and it's much less expensive than building a website.
And can I just say that we've had some brilliant support for small retailers over the last 4 months, where no matter what level of retail you are, you can get a trading online grant to help you get digital. So there actually isn't really much of an excuse to not have some sort of digital presence. But saying that, I think we are going to have a tsunami of issues here with small retailers because as Sonia said, some of them are just not digitally inclined, and running a digital business is like running a business. And if you're already full-time running a physical business, what we're seeing is a lot of retailers really, really struggling once the reins of all of this digital kit is handed over to them. They're really struggling. So there's actually an education piece there that we need to do over the coming 6 to 12 months and onwards to help smaller businesses to compete and to be able to finish the transition. It isn't as simple as here's a website, off you go,
I mean, it brings up a point. The whole foundation of the influencer market has been rocked to its core. All those influencers, had been, anyway, my argument is most of them are probably not making a living from it, but the ones who were, maybe at the top of the pyramid, they still continue to do so, but they are ultimately content creators. Maybe it's time to reimagine the relationship between the retailer and the influencer as content creator, and that there is a new way to partner to create symbiotic results.
Yeah. I mean, that brings us, and Sive Higgins has a question here about, in relation to online tastemakers and influencers, how do we encourage them to support Irish retailers more when the lure of AF links and percentage sales from UK pure players like Look Fantastic, Beauty Bay, etc. are too strong? I will say, from having worked on Irish brands, there is a willingness amongst the influencer community to do free of charge stuff to support Irish, but maybe the panel have different feelings.
Well, sorry, but I'll just quickly say, because I do some influencer work myself, I think there's a sort of a lot of expectation around what influencers do, essentially for free. I mean, it's, essentially if you send a dress to an influencer or a bag or whatever, there's an expectation there, which isn't necessarily, these people do work. They do need to get paid. And I think definitely there is an opportunity there, but I think it's to be respected on both sides, as in there's a commercial opportunity on the influencer side rather than just, well, you should really do this because you have loads of followers. So, yeah.
Influencers should be paid. And I think there's a whole conversation we could have around influencers, but there is too much of an expectation that they'll just post because they just will, because they're being sent something for free. And that's an unfair and unsustainable model, really. So, like as a brand, we are trying to pay people when we can, And that's, as a brand, you have to strike that balance, that you have to, I think also brands have to become more aware of the power of influencers and how influencers can help them, because it's still viewed in the same way social media is still viewed as that thing over there that you can kind of do for fun.
Ayuba, do you work with influencers? Ayuba, do you? Yeah.
We used to, but not as much anymore. We barely do.
Okay.
I just think you can use yourself to promote yourself. You know, you could, if the time you use as a post, you can actually make it good. You can also pay for promotion on Instagram. That does really well. You could pick and tell you wherever you want it to go to exactly. So that works really well as well. For us, we try not to as much.
Okay, I have a question here from Craig Grattan from the Sweet Potato Pizza Company. He wants to ask Alex, in the online space for food retail, if the online space for food retail continues to accelerate, will the frozen sector suffer due to limited delivery options?
That is a really good question. It's frozen delivery is really, really hard. We were talking about this briefly pre-call. That there are a few examples in the United States of frozen delivery, like there's one called Nugs, which seem to be doing well, but I think it's still kind of too early to tell. And there are some frozen meal delivery services in the UK. There's one called Eat 8, which is sort of high-end frozen meals that get delivered to you. But logistically, it's an enormous challenge and it's expensive. So if we ever do influencer drops, we usually we're sending them with dry ice, which is extremely expensive, and individual couriers and everything. So I honestly, I don't know the answer to that, partly because I'm in the creative side of the business, not the logistical side of the business. But I think it does have to be figured out, and I think there's an interesting challenge as well in the logistical and the delivery supply chain area to work with frozen food companies to maybe create a new way of doing it.
And finally, a question from Sinead Lodge. Any advice for getting a job in retail communications during this pandemic? Are brands open to hiring, or will budgets be cut? I mean, I can certainly answer that from the agency side. There is probably not much hiring going on at the moment, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be having conversations with the kind of organizations you'd love to work for. I don't know if others on the panel can comment on that in terms of getting into retail communications at this challenging COVID time.
Well, I would say if you are, if you're not currently employed, it would do no harm to identify 5 or 6 companies that you would like to work for, and off your own back create some content to show your intent. And build a body of work that they might see value in. It's you know, it is very difficult at the moment. There's going to be an issue with unemployment. You have to ask yourself, what do you need to do, and what are you willing to spend to be seen, and what are you willing to do to stand out above the crowd? And quite often it means going the extra mile and doing something that others won't.
That's a good answer. I mean, one other question here in the actual chat I see from Naomi Fitzgibbon. Some stores have pop-up vintage. Do you think permanent vintage sections is an option in Ireland, like say Liberty of London? When I did see in Brown Thomas at Christmas, they had Vestiaire and Shoppa Ella in as a pop-up.
Can I just say absolutely, and I think we're going to see an explosion in premium vintage in the very near future. So even if you're a local boutique and you're a smart boutique, it would serve you very well to get Ayuba, don't fall out with me for saying this. It would serve you very well to have a vintage section at the back of your store, and the benefits are many fold. So you've got the whole sustainability piece. You have this whole mini partnership that you're creating. You know, the customer comes in for their new frock, I'm such an old bird. They're new gamsey, they're new frock, whatever you call it these days when you're down with kids. But they bring in their old dress, and you sell the old dress for them, and you split the proceeds. And as a result, they're promoting your business because it's in their interest for your business to do well. So I think we're going to see an explosion, and not just in clothing, in furniture, in lots of things. We're going to see an explosion in premium vintage over the coming years.
We're working on it. We just don't have it. So basically, I'm not doing a lot every day. I just need to be motivated to take in. But my friends do that. They have a shop dedicated to that. People come with the old item and they sell it and just take percentage of it. Yeah. So we need to start doing that. We're looking into.
And actually, in parallel to that, we're looking at developing a circular piece to Len and Courtney. Obviously, Dress for Success supports women back into the workplace by giving them clothing to present at interview. I know you know very well, Emma. And we would love our community at Len and Courtney to be able to return items that they're finished with to support another woman towards her own empowerment. And that's a beautiful kind of, it's circular fashion, but it's also kind of a circular sentiment where one woman's empowerment can create another woman's empowerment. So yeah, we're looking at mechanisms.
Another big trend is all that inclusivity in sizing, in casting with re-ethnicity. You know, there's just that's something that's just growing and growing as a trend, and something that retailers definitely have to address, isn't it?
True.
100%. I mean, there's you know, and I suppose what this has done in terms of the kind of rise of the Black Lives Matter movement is it has allowed us to be aware of our own shortcomings. So, you know, all of a sudden we become aware of what we're not doing as much as what we are doing. Sizing's a difficult one, to be honest with you, because we increased our sizing to size 18 from size 16. We didn't get the pickup. It's very complex because it's not only producing the product, it's getting the right balance between telling the story that the sizes are larger without making it tokenistic. So it's actually a very, very fine balance that we haven't cracked yet, to be honest with you, but we're working on it.
Listen, we're coming to the end of our hour and we do want to stick to our time. So I'd like to say thank you very much to our excellent panel. I think it's been a lively and interesting discussion on the future of retail. Watch this space. We're going to plan a future of entertainment, a future of wellness and beauty, and a future of travel and hospitality webinars for the rest of the year. We previously had one on the future of content. So I think it's a time that we have to kind of try to see around corners and see what's going on in the world and keep ahead of our competition and keep Ireland vibrant and alive in the retail space. So thank you for joining in and listening, and thank you to our excellent panelists. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, Emma.
Bye.
Guys.
Thank you.